I'm here in Berkeley with Bharath Raghavan, who we spoke with earlier about the quine, and we're going to talk to Bharath about another topic, his project of guerrilla gardening. We'll start with a garden he has on the rooftop of the institute where he works. Bharath, can you tell me what I'm looking at here?
Sure, this is a manzano pepper. It's a type of perennial pepper. It's really spicy. It's an annual in most places, but here in California it can grow perennially, which is kind of nice. Most peppers you have to replant every year. So most of the stuff that is here, actually I think everything that I have up here right now is edible. That's kind of my focus in gardening, that I want to plant things that people can eat.
And have the workers here taken your, lead in terms of getting cuttings and using the fruits and so on?
I think so. I think the researchers they're slowly coming on board. People are getting interested in it. More than anything, people come and sit up here, which they never used to do.
Okay, so that's one of your gardening efforts. And last time I was up here, you were telling me about the guerrilla gardening. Can you talk about that?
Sure. So I noticed a lot of places around the city that, and this is true in a lot of cities, where along the sidewalk there'll be a strip of land, the sidewalk strip, in front of buildings, in front of houses, where there's sometimes grass, there's sometimes plants, but in most residential areas the city doesn't maintain it, and so sometimes it's just a bunch of weeds or just bare dirt. And I started with my the apartment building that I live in. The area in front of the building and on the side of the building was just packed hard dirt with some weeds growing in it, and I thought it'd be nice if there were some plants here, and I didn't have any garden space of my own. And I had this rooftop garden, but rooftop gardening is always a little difficult because you're still working in containers. You can't, just put the plants in the soil and have them, have their roots explore, find water. So it takes a little more maintenance when you're growing things in a rooftop garden. So I just started digging the soil partly to remove the weeds, and then because it was very dry, dusty soil, it didn't have much in the way of nutrients, I started adding coffee grounds, which is is good organic matter, has some of the nutrients plants like, from a local coffee shop just a block away. So I told them, hey, I'll give you a trash can, put your coffee grounds in this, and I'll pick it up and put that on the soil, and then the earthworms can eat it and sort of turn the soil, use the coffee grounds.
And they were down for that?
And they were totally fine with that, because they were just putting them in the green waste bin anyway. So it wasn't any more work for them, and they were happy to sort of contribute to the local gardening. So I started doing that, and then I started planting trees in front of the building. And so I planted a redwood, but redwood was actually the only non-fruit tree. So a pomegranate, avocado, mango, another pomegranate, persimmon, strawberry, guava, and another avocado. So that was in front of my apartment building.
When did you start this?
I guess about 2 years ago.
Okay, so they've had a little time to get established.
Yeah. The goal of sort of the way I'm picking plants and mostly fruit trees is I want them to be things where after the first year or two I won't have to take care of them. They'll send their roots down deep. The winter rains that we get will be sufficient to keep them going through the summer. And maybe without care they won't produce a ton of fruit, but they'll probably produce a decent amount. And then the people in the community can just walk by and they can pick some fruit on their wherever they're going. Because it sometimes strikes me that cities put in a lot of ornamental landscaping. They put in lots of whatever types of trees that are popular in your area. I mean, here there's a lot of maple trees, a lot of ginkgo trees, sometimes palm trees, and a lot of shrubs of various types. And then the city does end up watering some of them, and even if they don't end up watering them, those trees then drop leaves. They sometimes drop, maple trees drop those sort of spiky seed pods. Some other types of trees drop sort of sticky things that get stuck on the sidewalk. So if they have all these sort of downsides, why not have them be something that's edible?
Anything that produces any food.
Yeah, you might as well plant a fruit tree instead, and you get fruit out of it, and you get the ornamental value. And if you pick the right fruit trees then that are sort of good for the climate, then they'll take care of themselves after the first couple of years. So that's the approach I've been taking. And then the most recent project isn't really guerrilla gardening. There was a student house that there are these student co-op houses that are run by students that are sort of alternatives to dorms. And one of the houses was rebooting itself. It was sort of starting over, and I walked by one day and I was talking to the person in charge there, and he suggested, that I'd be welcome to help them figure out a new garden plan. And so we've been doing that. And so that's sort of an ongoing project. We're putting in about 30 fruit trees there. And the house shares its food, so, this is perfect for them. They're going to have fruit that they get right from their own garden to feed the house, and decreases their costs too.
So did you invent guerrilla gardening, or is this something that other people are doing? Because I
Lots
had
of
never
people
heard
do.
of it. Okay.
Yeah.
Lots of people are doing this.
Lots of people are doing this. By its nature, it's not organized. So people just sort of do it wherever they can, with the resources they have, whatever place they're in. It's actually pretty popular in the East Bay. Berkeley, Oakland, I'd say mostly a lot in Berkeley and Oakland. There's a lot of guerrilla gardening projects going on. One project I heard about in San Francisco that I found pretty interesting is some cities plant non-fruiting varieties of fruit trees. So a lot of times there are species of trees that have both fruiting and non-fruiting varieties. I think there are some for pears, pomegranates. There are some varieties that don't produce fruit, but then there are others that do produce fruit. And so what people have been doing is they've been grafting fruiting branches onto non-fruiting city trees.
That's pretty guerrilla.
And so, the idea is that for those who don't know grafting, you basically are splicing a branch of one tree onto a branch of another tree. And once that sort of splice heals, then it'll start growing and producing, whatever the fruit was of the new branch that you stuck on there. And so they'll take a branch off of a good fruiting variety, and then they'll stick that onto a tree of a non-fruiting variety that the city already planted, and all of a sudden this city tree is producing fruit. And so that's kind of a neat approach.
Pushback from the city about this?
I don't think the city's happy about it, but
Yeah.
I don't think it's easy for them to find out. And the whole idea of guerrilla gardening falls into this, I think, a little bit of a gray area, in that some cities have very strict ordinances about what you can and cannot plant. Some cities don't really have rules about this sort of thing. And sometimes they do have rules, but they're not well specified or well enforced. And so it depends on where you are. Partly it's that very few cities are interested in going after people for guerrilla gardening because, for example, in the case of the sidewalk strip, the land is city land, at least in the case of Berkeley, but a lot of cities. The land between the sidewalk and the curb is city land, but the burden for maintaining it is on the landowner of the sort of adjacent parcel. And so you're supposed to take care of it anyway, as long as the person there agrees planting fruit trees makes sense. Even though the city, for example, has lists of things that they do and don't want planted, and there are very few fruit trees that are on the sort of pre-approved list. There's been a movement to actually get cities to allow more of this. I think in LA, the city of LA and the county of LA, there's been a lot of effort put into this. There are several projects, guerrilla gardening projects in LA, where people have been trying to grow vegetables on the sidewalk strip in pretty blighted neighborhoods. And they first got a lot of pushback from the city, and the city said, we're going to charge you to pull up all your stuff. And eventually, I think they've been getting the city council to revisit those laws that prevent people from growing vegetables in the sidewalk strip. One of the reasons I don't grow vegetables in the sidewalk strip and by the street side is because the soil sometimes has toxins in it. Lead can accumulate because of years of lead paint, of car exhaust back when there was leaded gasoline, and that lead stays in the soil. It then will leach into vegetables that are grown in that kind of soil. And it's not just in the sidewalk strip, even sort of many cities, backyard soils will have lead in it, and it's not good to eat lead, obviously. So
What about the fruits, though?
yeah, so fruit trees, as it turns out, generally don't. The lead does not accumulate in the fruit. It can sometimes in the wood of the tree, but it doesn't end up in the fruit.
Okay.
Partly it's not quite this simple, but it has to do just with gravity. That lead is a heavy element, and it doesn't end up propagating very high into the tree, whereas greens that are right on the ground, it will get into the green, but also the soil, the dirt will end up on the leaves of your greens, and if you don't wash them really perfectly, you'll end up eating a little bit of that leaded soil. So that's why I don't like doing veggies. Plus, it requires more maintenance. A fruit tree, once it's established, it'll take care of itself.
Yeah, exactly. Wow, well that's inspiring, and you did this just from walking around and observing and interacting with your environment, which I think is really great.
Thanks.